She didn't belong in that room. Not because she couldn't, because she wasn't supposed to. Kara was hired to clean. Nothing more. Mop the floors, scrub the glass, take out the trash. But on that day, she was holding a tray with 6 black coffees, extra hot. She walked into the 39th floor boardroom just as the billion-dollar deal was about to close. The carpet was white. The chairs? Leather. And at the far end of the glass table sat 3 men who'd never spoken a word to someone like her unless it was to say, "Clean faster." She smiled anyway, because that's what she was taught to do. Then it happened. One step, slightly uneven, one cup tilted, and coffee splashed across the contract. The very contract they were minutes away from signing. The room froze, the kind of silence that hits your ears like a punch. Then, "You just cost this company $200 million, one man said without looking up. Someone grabbed her arm, someone else laughed. Kara didn't speak. She just looked down at the soaked paper, and the one page stuck to her wrist. That's when she noticed something. A number that shouldn't be there, a sentence scratched in last-minute ink. It was small, hidden, but it made her stop breathing for a second. She wasn't supposed to notice. She wasn't supposed to be able to read it, but she did. And instead of leaving the room, Kara did something no one expected. She walked back in. She wasn't even supposed to be on that floor. Kara's schedule had changed last minute. The regular cleaner for level 39 called out sick, and Kara was offered double time to cover the morning shift. She said yes because double time meant groceries. Simple as that. She took the service elevator. It groaned on the way up, always a little slower when someone from facilities pressed the buttons. At 7:58 a.m., she stepped onto a floor that smelled like money. Air conditioning cranked too cold, walls made of something smooth and European, and people in shoes that cost more than her monthly rent. No one looked at her. She might as well have been a shadow with a mop. But Kara had this thing. She noticed everything. That morning, it was the intern, a skinny white kid in a suit 3 sizes too big, holding back tears while whispering into his phone. Something about forgetting the coffee order. 6 cups, triple shot, one with oat milk. CEO's preferences, etched in stone. He hung up, pale and shaking. Kara didn't ask questions. She just said, "You still got 20 minutes," and handed him a folded napkin with a note. Cafe Bruno. Use this name, they'll know. He blinked. Why are you? But she was already walking toward the elevator. 10 minutes later, she came back with a tray of hot coffees, labeled, neat, precise. The intern looked like he'd seen God. He thanked her 5 times. She didn't do it for him. She did it because somebody should help sometimes. Because she'd been there, scared, small, one mistake from disaster, and helping him cost her nothing. Well, until it did. It was 8:34 a.m. when Kara walked into the executive boardroom with the tray. She didn't ask permission. The intern had disappeared. No one else moved. The room was full, 10 suits, a $25,000 speakerphone in the middle, pens poised over contracts thick enough to choke a horse. She walked straight to the table, heels soft on the plush white carpet, hands steady. She'd carried heavier things. She'd carried people when her grandmother couldn't walk. But this tray, this one had danger in it. Hot liquid, glass table. Too many eyes. Still, she did what she came to do. "Coffee?" she said, voice calm, respectful. No one answered. A few glances. Some ignored her completely. She placed the cups one by one, remembered the labels. Triple shot with cinnamon? Far right. No sugar? Front and center. Last one. CEO's oat milk latte. He hadn't even looked up. As she reached across the table, the toe of her shoe grazed the edge of the carpet. It shifted. A little, she shifted too. The tray tilted. One cup didn't make it. It slipped, hit the glass with a loud thud, and exploded across the center of the table. Brown liquid shot across pages, dripped down the side. The contract, a stack of pristine white, was soaked in seconds. Time. Stopped. Every head turned, not at the papers, at her. Someone gasped, someone swore under their breath. Then came the voice. Cold, measured, lethal. You just cost this company $200 million. It wasn't a scream. That would have been better. It was worse. It was delivered like a fact, like gravity, like truth. Kara froze, the tray still in her hand, one cup trembling. A drop hit the floor. No one moved to help. No one said, "It's okay." A woman near the window clicked her tongue and muttered, "This is what happens when we cut costs on staff." Another voice, "Get her out." And that's when Kara felt the paper. A single sheet, damp, folded, and clinging to her wrist where the coffee hit. She pulled it gently. She didn't mean to read it, but she saw it. One line, handwritten, not typed like the rest. A name, a percentage, a number that didn't make sense. She blinked, looked up. Nobody had noticed what stuck to her hand. They were too busy condemning her existence. She took a slow breath, set the tray down, whispered, "Sorry," and walked out. But her fingers wouldn't let go of the page. The break room on floor 12 didn't have windows, just fluorescent lights and a vending machine that hadn't worked since spring. Kara sat on a metal chair, back straight, palms flat on her thighs. In her hand, folded in half, was the page. Still damp. The coffee had blurred the edges, but the ink was intact. At first, she didn't know what she was looking at. It wasn't part of the catering request. It wasn't a janitorial schedule. It was legal, contractual, and wrong. She read it again, slower, line by line. At the bottom of the page, scribbled in ballpoint, barely legible, was a handwritten adjustment. Clause 7.3b, revise equity split to reflect additional 12% control by PW, undisclosed. Kara didn't know who PW was, but she knew this. No one writes undisclosed on a legal document unless they're hiding something. She stared at it, her stomach cold, her fingers tightened, then loosened. She stood, folded the paper into a tight square, slipped it under her waistband, tucked against her back, and just as she turned to leave, her name came over the loudspeaker. "Kara Mitchell, please report to HR immediately." She closed her eyes, one deep breath. Then she walked. The HR hallway was made of glass, every room a fishbowl. You could see everyone watching you but hear nothing, like being underwater but hotter. When Kara stepped into room B9, she didn't sit. Across the table sat a woman in a lavender blouse and tight smile. Her badge read People Experience Director, which somehow sounded worse than manager. "Kara," the woman began too cheerfully, "do you know why we asked you here?" Kara didn't answer. The woman continued. "We've received reports of a disruption during a sensitive executive session. You were involved?" "Accident," Kara said simply. The woman nodded. "Still, protocols exist for a reason. That floor is high security. You were delivering coffee?" Kara hesitated. "No, I wasn't scheduled to deliver anything." "That part was true, so why were you there?" Kara blinked. "Helping someone." The woman smiled wider. "See, that's exactly the kind of initiative we appreciate in the right context. But today's incident created significant exposure. Legal concerns, optics." She leaned in, voice lowering like she was sharing a secret. "You understand how this might appear to stakeholders?" Kara stared. "You mean like a spill?" "I mean like a security breach." There it was. Not clumsiness, not an accident. A breach. Kara stood a little taller. Her hands didn't shake. "I didn't touch anything," she said. "We're not accusing, just reviewing." The woman slid a white envelope across the table. Inside, a notice of suspension pending investigation. "Effective immediately, you'll be escorted out." Back in the locker room, Kara changed slowly, folded her uniform with care, slipped her ID badge into the bin. But before she zipped her bag, she unfolded the page. That note. That line. It stared back like a dare. 12%. Undisclosed. She wasn't a lawyer, but she'd worked in document review before taking this job. Long before, she knew how contracts were built and how they fell apart. Still, her hands hovered. This wasn't her business. This wasn't her world. She could throw it out, pretend she never saw it, pretend that page got ruined like the rest. But then she remembered something her father once told her. Some things, once you know them, you gotta carry them. She tucked the page into a plastic sleeve from her notebook, zipped her bag, and walked to the elevator. But she didn't go down, she pressed 39. The ding of the elevator reaching the executive floor felt like a warning bell. Kara stepped out into silence. The hallway was empty now. The boardroom's glass doors were closed, blinds half drawn. Voices inside. Tense. She took 2 steps forward. "Excuse me, miss?" A security guard. White shirt. Walkie clipped to the vest. "This floor is restricted." "I know," Kara said. Calm. Too calm. "We've been instructed not to allow anyone through without clearance." She didn't argue, just held out the page. He didn't take it, didn't look at it. "Ma'am, I need you to leave." Another voice called from down the hall. "Sir, she's not cleared. Escort her out." The guard moved forward. Light touch to the elbow. But Kara didn't move. Instead, she stepped past him. 1 step. 2. He followed. Hand to walkie. Inside the room, voices rose. A man shouted something about terms being altered. Another said, "This is the version I was sent." A woman snapped, "No, it's not." The door was still cracked. Kara pushed it open. The room turned. She didn't knock. She stepped inside like she had a right to be there. And for the first time that day, maybe the first time in her entire life, she didn't feel like she needed permission. The boardroom went silent again. Not from the coffee, not from shock, but from disbelief. A janitor had walked back into a closed, high-level executive meeting, while suspended. 10 faces turned. The CEO raised his head. The security guard behind her froze in the doorway, unsure whether to pull her back or pretend he didn't see anything at all. Kara didn't flinch. She stepped forward and placed the folded page, carefully, intentionally, in the center of the long glass table. It landed between the contracts, still damp at the corners, smelling faintly of espresso. She didn't say a word, just met the CEO's eyes. For a second, just one, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the man sitting to the right of the CEO, a polished executive with silver cufflinks and a gelled smile, leaned forward. "What is this?" he demanded, half laughing. "Another delivery?" No one laughed with him. The CEO didn't blink. He just reached for the page, unfolded it, read, then read it again, and his whole face changed. Not rage, not confusion, something else. A sharp clinical freeze. The woman across the table leaned in. "What's wrong?" The CEO didn't answer. Instead, he held the page up toward the light. Everyone squinted. Someone whispered, "Is that her handwriting?" "No," the CEO muttered. "It's his." A beat passed, then another voice, lower, strained, cut through. "This is not the version I signed off on." Now the room shifted. Chairs moved, papers shuffled. Suddenly, the $200 million deal wasn't the only thing on the table. Now it was trust, documentation, legality, truth. And Kara? She stood absolutely still, her hands clasped, her breathing shallow. No one told her to leave. No one could. The man with the gelled smile, PW, spoke again, louder now. "This is absurd. That page wasn't part of the final packet. She must have taken it from somewhere." The CEO looked at Kara. "Did you?" Kara didn't blink. "It stuck to my hand," she said, "when the coffee spilled." PW scoffed. "Oh, how convenient. The help ruins the paperwork and then claims she found a secret clause. Are we really taking this seriously?" "You added this without disclosure," the CEO said, still staring at the page. "You snuck a control shift into an equity line before signing." PW turned red. "That is categorically untrue." "Then let's call legal," the woman across the table said. Someone was already reaching for their phone. Kara stepped back. This wasn't her battle now. She'd done her part. She didn't want to gloat. She didn't even want credit. She just wanted to breathe again. But as she turned to leave, she heard it. "Stop." The CEO's voice. She turned around. He stood, tall, measured. silent. Then, "You're not leaving." Kara's heart pounded. For a second, she thought she was being arrested, or worse, interrogated, scapegoated. But then he continued, "You saw what no one else did. You didn't ignore it. You didn't hide it. You brought it straight back into the room that tried to erase you." He looked around the table. "That's more integrity than some of the people I've paid 6 figures to sit in those chairs." Silence. Someone exhaled. Someone else picked up their pen like it suddenly weighed 10 pounds. The CEO turned to her again. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Kara Mitchell." "Kara, you're staying. You're going to want to see how this ends." She didn't nod, didn't smile, just sat down at the far end of the table, the lowest chair in the room. But for the first time in her life, it felt like a throne. Phones rang, voices sharpened. The room that once vibrated with confidence now buzzed with suspicion. 2 lawyers arrived within minutes. One corporate, one private. No one offered Kara water. No one looked at her directly. But they all knew she was still in the room. The document was scanned, magnified, and projected onto the glass wall at the end of the boardroom. A lawyer pointed at the screen. "This handwritten clause isn't in the final reviewed draft. It doesn't match the timestamp." "Then how did it get in there?" someone demanded. The CEO folded his arms. His jaw was locked. PW, slick, stiff, red-faced, shifted in his seat. Maybe someone planted it. Maybe she planted it. All eyes flicked to Kara. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't need to defend herself. The absurdity of his accusation hung in the air like cheap cologne. The corporate lawyer interrupted, tone dry as sandpaper. "Unless Ms. Mitchell has access to our encrypted contract system and forged your handwriting, I'd suggest we stay focused." Boom! The oxygen left the room. Kara sat still in the far chair, her back straight, hands on her lap. She didn't know all the legal words flying around, but she could read energy. And something had shifted. Now they weren't arguing about a mess, they were uncovering a lie. The CEO stepped forward. "Peter," he said slowly, using PW's full first name, which in CEO speak is equivalent to a slap. "Walk me through why a clause benefiting you personally was inserted between drafts without disclosure." Peter laughed. The wrong kind of laugh. The desperate kind. "I didn't insert anything. If anything, this might have been sabotage from the junior partner, or an old version, or maybe someone's trying to shift the narrative from an embarrassing screw-up this morning." He looked at Kara again. Because, let's not forget, this all started with her mistake. Kara stood up. Quiet. Calm. "I brought in the coffee because your intern was about to cry in the hallway," she said. "I picked up the paper because it stuck to my hand. I walked back in here because no one else was going to." She paused. "If this clause hurts your reputation, maybe it's not the coffee that did it." The room cracked open, like ice underfoot, breaking, splintering. Not loudly, not all at once, but irreversibly. The CEO stepped away from the table, pulled out his phone, called someone. The words were clipped, professional, controlled. "Compliance, full audit. Start with PW's version control access. I want a forensic trackback on clause 7.3b today." He hung up, looked around. "This meeting is over." Then, turning to Kara, "Except for you." 10 minutes later, the boardroom was empty. Just Kara and the CEO. He sat across from her now, not behind the tall chair, not above her, but eye level. He looked tired, like something in his world had just cracked in half, and he wasn't sure which half he was standing on. "How did you know what you were looking at?" "I didn't," Kara said, "but I knew it didn't look right." "You worked with contracts before?" She nodded. "Before the cleaning job?" Another nod. "Where?" "Bainbridge and Charles, legal doc control. Temp Digus years ago." He nodded slowly. Then silence. Then, "You're wasted here." She smiled. "Tell me something I don't know." Outside the boardroom, the building hummed with the usual white-collar noise. Phones ringing, heels clicking, emails flying. But in that glass cube on the 39th floor, something real had happened. Something unscripted. unbranded, unpaid for, and Kara had started it with a cup of coffee. 2 days later, Kara sat at home with the same boots by the door, the same chipped mug of tea in her hand, the same unpaid electricity bill on the counter. But something was different. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Kara Mitchell? This is Elise from the CEO's office. He'd like you to come in tomorrow. 10 a.m. Not as staff, as a guest. She blinked, said nothing, just nodded, because somehow she'd known. The next morning, she didn't wear her uniform. She wore a blouse that had sat untouched in her closet for months. Clean jeans, no mop in her hand, no badge on her chest. Security didn't stop her this time. In fact, they nodded. The elevator doors opened onto 39 like a scene from a dream. But it was real. Same long hallway, same glass walls, same cold air. But this time, when she walked into the boardroom, there was only one man inside. The CEO. He stood as she entered. No power move, no ego. Sit. She did. On the same chair as last time. But this time it didn't feel like a throne. It felt like a seat that belonged to her. He handed her a folder. Inside, a formal retraction of PW's equity share. Internal memo confirming contract tampering. And one more thing. At the bottom. Offer compliance and ethics associate. Temporary to full $90-day review. Kara looked up. He didn't smile, but he nodded. You noticed what no one else did. You spoke when everyone else stayed silent. You weren't supposed to matter, but you did. She swallowed hard. Why me? Because every company brags about integrity until someone proves whether they actually have it. You did. He stood, walked to the window. You saved us $200 million. With a spill. Kara stood slowly. I didn't do it for that. I know. And I'm not taking this because you feel guilty. I wouldn't offer it if I did. Silence again. Not awkward, not tense, just clean. Like something rotten had been scrubbed out of the system. By someone who used to mop floors. That night, Kara walked home under orange streetlights. The city looked the same. Loud, fast, rude. But inside her chest, something had shifted. She wasn't smaller than the building anymore. She wasn't less than the system. She was part of the story now. And even if they tried to erase her tomorrow, they couldn't. Because she'd left a stain. Just not the kind they expected. Final image. A close-up of the contract. The coffee-stained page. Framed. Pinned behind glass in the CEO's office with a plaque that reads, Integrity is messy. Keep watching anyway. KM.